Tonight,
Chief Justice John Roberts has been a disappointment to conservatives.
from the Supreme Court to religious freedom and the 2020 election, our exclusive, wide-ranging interview with Vice President Mike Pence. And
it's critically important that we come to a compromise if there is a deal to be made.
Is the stalemate on Capitol Hill beginning to break? The latest on the negotiations for a coronavirus relief bill.
God lifts us up.
We're not going to go back in buildings for the rest of 2020.
The choices churches are being forced to make due to the uncertainty of the pandemic. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Vice President Mike Pence with his own ruling on the Supreme Court's Chief Justice. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Well, the VP called Chief Justice John Roberts a, quote, disappointment to conservatives. The harsh critique coming during an exclusive interview with CBN News. Chief political analyst David Brody traveled to Florida with the Vice President Wednesday and joins us now for more on that discussion. David, I imagine this has a lot to do with the fact that Chief Justice Roberts has literally become the swing vote in recent years.
Well, that's right. And Mike Pence clearly had something on his mind during the interview. And lo and behold, I had no idea that was coming. Typically, Mike Pence doesn't make big, huge news like this, but he was thoroughly animated throughout this interview. And yes, he went after Joe Biden. And in our time on Air Force Two and in Florida, he really lowered the boom on John Roberts. Humid August trip to Florida seemed the perfect place for Mike Pence to turn up the heat and motivate the base. At one of his signature Faith in America campaign events, he spelled out the stakes in the upcoming election.
The choice will not be whether America will be more conservative or more liberal, more Republican or more Democrat, more red or more blue. The choice we face is whether America remains America.
In our time together on the road, the vice president was animated throughout, lowering the boom, especially when it came to his thoughts on what a Joe Biden presidency could mean for the country.
Joe Biden and the Democratic Party have been overtaken by the radical left. He's calling for a historic increase in funding to Planned Parenthood of America. He would appoint activist judges to our courts who would literally trample on the progress that we've made on life and religious liberties.
And speaking of the courts, the vice president made very clear that the Supreme Court will be of paramount importance in this election, especially because he sees a Chief Justice who can no longer be counted on to be a reliable conservative.
Are you scratching your head a little bit on John Roberts? I mean, we're not going to call him David Souter at this point, but conservatives have had a track record of having some problems with Supreme Court justices that you thought were going to be a reliable vote. Or at least when I say a reliable vote, I'm just talking about, you know, to adhere to conservative principles.
Look, we have great respect for the institution of the Supreme Court of the United States. But Chief Justice John Roberts has been a disappointment to conservatives.
Pence citing multiple examples, from Roberts' key 2012 decision to uphold Obamacare, and more recently, when he sided with liberals to strike down a Louisiana pro-life law.
I think it's been a wake-up call for pro-life voters around the country who understand that in a very real sense, the destiny of the Supreme Court is on the ballot in 2020.
He sees religious freedom under attack as well after Roberts joined liberals again just last week. In that case, the Supreme Court ruled against a Nevada church, upholding a limit on the number of people attending church services during COVID-19.
There are many Americans, not just religious Americans, many Americans concerned about where this is going from a religious freedom standpoint as it relates specifically to COVID-19.
Well, look, our nation has been through a very challenging time, and we're still working our way through the coronavirus pandemic. But you don't give up your constitutional liberties, even in a pandemic.
To be sure, the pandemic will be a major factor for both sides in this election. Here in Florida, a recent COVID spike is hopefully giving way to a slow return to normal. But in this election cycle, the only thing we know for sure is nothing is normal.
Well, hello, Florida.
Gone are the big campaign events of the past. replaced by smaller gatherings like the one that Pence attended in Florida, part of the Life Wins tour.
And under this president, I promise you, we're going to continue to work every day to put the right to life back at the center of American law.
President Trump and the VP will need an all-hands-on-deck approach to beat a candidate that, well, at least according to many polls, is leading the race. But will Biden be a match for Trump in the upcoming debates? Some Democrats have called for Biden to skip them, and Trump supporters believe that the 77-year-old has lost a step or two, becoming slower.
I can't speak to some of what's being discussed about him today, but the antidote is to be on that stage, to square up, to be willing to debate President Donald Trump. The American people deserve nothing less.
They also deserve a fair election. Democrats want massive mail-in balloting across the entire country, something the Trump administration says is fraught with all sorts of problems.
If 2020 comes around and all of a sudden there is massive mail-in balloting, is it a fair election?
Democrat governors around the country, using the excuse of the coronavirus pandemic, are talking about mailing ballots to literally everyone in their state with no safeguard for the integrity of the process. That principle of one person, one vote is at the center of our democracy, and we've got to defend it. That's why you're going to see this president and our administration head straight to the courthouse. We're going to oppose universal mail-in voting, even while we encourage and respect the great tradition of absentee balloting. And we're going to win that fight. I truly do believe it.
John, it's all about judges. Judges, judges, judges. We heard that from the vice president in this interview about a month or so ago when I interviewed President Trump. We heard the same thing. It's part of the political playbook, clearly, to win a second term for this White House. John?
David, great get there. You know, Pence's attack on Chief Justice Roberts' conservative credentials comes as Gallup releases a new poll showing that the majority of Americans, 58%, approved of the High Court after a busy and consequential term. That is the highest rating in 11 years. Clearly, not everyone feels the same. Among them, Vice President Pence. Have we ever heard the Vice President strike such a strong rebuke against the Chief Justice before? Did he say anything more other than what we heard on tape?
Well, first of all, no, we have not heard those type of words coming from Vice President Pence. And quite frankly, I can't remember in any recent memory a vice president going that far, especially this close to an election. But it's interesting. I want to play you the whole exchange. It runs a couple minutes because we obviously put the key part in the package. But when you hear the context, you'll hear a little bit more as to why Pence is concerned and why conservative Christians and people of faith should be concerned as well.
Are you scratching your head a little bit on John Roberts? I mean, we're not going to call him David Souter at this point, but conservatives have had a track record of having some problems with Supreme Court justices that you thought were going to be a reliable vote. Or at least when I say reliable vote, I'm just talking about, you know, to adhere to conservative principles.
Look, we have great respect for the institution of the Supreme Court of the United States. But Chief Justice John Roberts has been a disappointment to conservatives, whether it be the Obamacare decision or whether it be a spate of recent decisions all the way through Calvary Chapel. It's a reminder, and I think several cases out of the Supreme Court are a reminder of just how important this election is for the future of the Supreme Court. We remember the issue back in 2016, which I believe loomed large in voters' decisions between Hillary Clinton and the man who would become president of the United States. And some people thought that it wouldn't be as big an issue these days, but I think that's all changed. The recent decision, and again, a narrow Supreme Court decision, striking down a Louisiana pro-life law that only said that doctors working in abortion clinics would have to have admitting privileges at local hospitals. That's a very modest restriction on abortion providers, but a narrow majority in the Supreme Court still said it was unacceptable. And I think it's been a wake-up call for pro-life voters around the country who understand, in a very real sense, the destiny of the Supreme Court is on the ballot in 2020. And that's why President Trump announced that he's going to publish another list of men and women from which he will draw any future appointments to the Supreme Court of the United States. He did that in 2016. He kept his word. He's going to do that in the fall of 2020, and in the next 4 years, he'll keep his word and appoint more principled conservatives to our courts.
You know, John Roberts being off the reservation might hurt conservatives, obviously, but for this administration, it actually could help them, especially with the campaign, knowing that John Roberts, if he's off the reservation, then the Supreme Court and judges becomes even more paramount, and they can push that going forward into the fall. Back to you.
All right, David, we know it was a long day for you and your team yesterday, so thanks for your time and get some rest.
Thanks, John.
Coming up, unemployment in America. We'll break down the latest numbers and what it means for the economy when we come back.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
This is CBN News Watch.
Thanks for joining us.
Watch breaking news, exclusive stories and programs, credible news reporting.
We show you what's happening in the world and how you can pray about it.
This is CBN News Watch, because truth matters. Weekdays at 5 on the CBN News Channel.
Yes, right on time.
From Superbook.
Pepper's Pizza Palace is donating pizza for everyone today. Wait. I have big plans today.
Trust in God even when times are tough. He has a plan for your life.
Hey, we're going to be late for the grand opening.
My parents want me to help with this outreach thing, feeding the community. What am I supposed to do here? Superbook!
Join the Superbook Club and get Superbook The Birth of Moses, plus 2 copies to share with others, all for your gift of only $25.
Pharaoh ordered all newborn Hebrew boys thrown into the Nile River, and I have a 3-month-old brother.
The Birth of Moses. Yours for a gift of only $25.
What will you do the next time the soldiers come? I do not know, but I trust God has a plan for all of us.
Superbook Club members, free streaming for seasons 1, 2, and 3 is now available.
Welcome back. New York is trying to dissolve the National Rifle Association, announcing a lawsuit against the gun rights group. The state attorney general today saying the NRA engages in, quote, illegal self-dealings.
It's clear that the NRA has been failing to carry out its stated mission for many, many years, and instead has operated as a breeding ground for greed, abuse, and brazen illegality. And today, we send a strong and loud message that no one is above the law, not even the NRA.
While departing the White House on a visit to Ohio, President Trump said the NRA should leave New York, suggesting instead the group should be based in Texas. Well, to the economy, new unemployment numbers today show a slight improvement, emphasis on slight, because the amount of people requesting help from the government remains incredibly high. 1.2 million additional workers applied for jobless benefits last week. That's down about 250,000 from 2 weeks ago. Still, for 20 consecutive weeks now, more than 1 million laid-off workers have turned in unemployment applications. For context, prior to the pandemic, jobless claims had never surpassed 700,000, and that's even during the Great Recession. Well, joining me now, Mark Hamrick, Senior Economic Analyst and Washington Bureau Chief at Bankrate.com. Mark, it's always great to have you with us here on Faith Nation.
Thank you, John. Great to be with you.
Well, Mark, for 20 straight weeks now, we've seen record high unemployment. Do you at all see a light at the end of the tunnel eventually for applications going down?
Well, John, the good news here is that this is the lowest number we've had since these claims have been elevated over these 20 weeks. And we wish we could press them down and get them back to pre-pandemic levels. But that is going to be a journey, not a one-day ride. And so we see continuing claims coming down, but we still see the number of claims being paid broadly at more than 30 million. And we're just some short amount of time here away from the report on the July employment report. And that's expected to show that the unemployment rate continued to decline, but the amount of jobs that were added in the latest month likely fewer than before. So we still have a long way to go here.
Mark, what's interesting about these numbers is that the Labor Department's official unemployment figures don't include gig workers and self-employed people who've lost their jobs. What are we seeing on that front?
Well, those are people who have been covered by the CARES Act, which expanded unemployment benefits and gets us to that 31 million number that we saw here in the latest reading of the total number of claims being paid. And I would suggest that that indicates that because we've had tremendous beneficial innovation in our economy, we need to think about work as occurring in a way that's different than it was back in the day, where it was perhaps an 8-hour shift and you have an employer that you might spend decades with. That doesn't happen as often anymore. And so I do think that regulation and the social safety net that we would think is consistent with our values here in the United States, all that needs to be updated to reflect the new reality that employment is a more precarious proposition these days. And right now, we're in one of the worst economic climates of our lifetimes. And we'll get out of this because there's tremendous work being done right now to deliver those much needed vaccines. And that will be a product of American ingenuity and ingenuity from all over the world. But in the meantime, we're still in the midst of this.
Ending on a positive note there, Mark. Speaking of positive notes, the president has said the once thriving Trump economy is on the way back. Based on what you're seeing, do you share his optimism?
I think we may have seen the worst of the decline behind us. I do think we're continuing to rebound. I am not one who, professionally re-enunciates the president's words, but in terms of what we share together, a hope for a better status quo in the United States. We're on that journey right now, but with an unemployment rate that was more recently reported in the double digits, that's not checking the box off and saying mission accomplished. Not yet.
All right. Bank rates, Mark Hamrick. Mark, thank you so much. We always appreciate you being with us.
Thank you, John.
Well, on Capitol Hill, negotiations seemingly at a stalemate when it comes to striking a deal for the next round of COVID relief. White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows says the two sides are trillions of dollars apart. Our White House correspondent Ben Kennedy has been monitoring the meetings and joins us now with the latest. Ben, where do things stand now?
Well, John, it is Republicans who are saying that Democrats want trillions of dollars more than is needed. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer pushed back on that and accusing the White House of, quote, not truly being awake to what the country needs.
Democrats have engaged in arduous negotiations with the White House, trying to impress upon them the gravity of the situation. We have made some progress this week, but not enough.
I see a light at the end of the tunnel. We just don't know how long the tunnel is. But we have to move quickly, more quickly, because the light at that end of the tunnel may be the freight train of the virus coming at us.
President Trump tweeted for his staff to continue working on an executive order with respect to payroll tax cut, eviction protections, unemployment extensions, and student loan repayment options. Trump says he wants to be prepared in the event lawmakers do not come to a deal this week, but some are questioning what Trump can accomplish through an executive order. Now, one thing that hinges on this deal is unemployment benefits. Democrats want to continue the $600 a week for unemployment benefits, while Republicans want to cut that number to a $200 weekly bonus. The House has suspended their August recess until a bill is, in fact, on the president's desk. John?
All right, CBN's Ben Kennedy. Thanks, Ben. The pandemic and places of worship, the long-term effects of the coronavirus on churches when Faith Nation returns.
When I came to Regent University, it's like the world opened up. I felt like I needed to advance my career and go back to school. Regent was a perfect fit for me. The Regent professors are world class. You are equipped. The focus of the faculty is on each individual student, whether it's online or in person. You become a part of Regent's family. You carry with you not just the content and the knowledge, but the confidence to understand that we can be significant in the world.
Regent University. Follow your path.
Nigerian Christians
in Iran are routinely arrested.
Happily, Christians continue to suffer.
In times of trial and affliction, you need to know the truth.
One of the fastest growing Christian populations in the world.
Join Wendy Griffith and George Thomas for Christian World News.
Young people are the ones who are open to the gospel.
Powerful stories of suffering and hope that affect all Christians. Watch Christian World News, Saturday at 5 p.m. Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
Welcome back. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine is the latest politician to test positive for COVID-19. He was supposed to greet President Trump today during a trip to an Ohio Whirlpool factory. DeWine discovered his diagnosis after taking a test required of anyone meeting with the president. The 73-year-old is asymptomatic, and he immediately returned to the governor's mansion to quarantine for the next 14 days. Well, when the pandemic began, most churches shut their doors to keep people safe. Now, more than 5 months later, many remain closed either by government order or by choice. And as Charlene Aaron shows us, there's widespread uncertainty about when they'll open again.
As churches across the country grapple with how to safely reopen their doors, some pastors say they won't resume regular services until 2021. That's a big change from earlier this year, when many thought the coronavirus shutdown would only last a few weeks.
When COVID-19 forced houses of worship to end in-person services, many switched to streaming church online. While some have resumed traditional Sunday services, a growing number of pastors say the virus remains too much of a risk. Andy Stanley of Atlanta's North Point Community Church recently announced plans to continue virtual services for the rest of the year. Stanley, who leads the 40,000-member congregation, says he can't ensure people's safety for in-person services. Others, like Pastor Brian Tome of Cincinnati's Crossroad Church, agree.
We're not going to go back in buildings for the rest of 2020.
As the COVID uncertainty stretches into August, the number of people watching online services has also declined from the record numbers seen 4 or 5 months ago. According to a recent Barna survey, 32% of practicing Christians have stepped away from digital worship.
They're dealing with grief or they're dealing with depression. People are just thrown off their rhythms, and they're just hanging on as best as they can. And that means they're dropping away from things they used to do, unfortunately, like go to church or stream services.
In order to bring people back, Pastor Tome has moved services from his megachurch to the surrounding area.
We're having community events at all of our buildings. We're a multi-site church. We're also having live events at a park in Cincinnati. Social distancing, people wearing masks.
God lifts us up. He pulls us up.
Southern Baptist President and Pastor J.D. Greer recently pivoted to house churches.
We need to become, from now until at least the end of the year, basically a movement of house churches. Instead of the Summit Church being 12,000 people meeting in 12 locations on the weekend, now we're going to be about 15,000 people meeting in about 2,400 locations. Our primary focus moving forward is going to be gathering together in small groups for worship and prayer, in homes, with multiple families.
Meanwhile, most spiritual leaders say they're willing to reopen their buildings if and when cases drop. Until then, they're holding out hope that these new ways of ministry will lead to greater opportunities.
I would love if there was some miracle move of God and shoot, we could open up at Christmas. I would love that. God's doing a new thing. And the more energy and effort we spend thinking about the old thing and structuring for the old thing and complain that we don't have the old thing, the less we're going to actually have something for the new thing.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
All right. Thank you, Charlene. Why one hospital is turning to robots to treat sick kids, helping to melt their sadness away. We explain after this.
Christians around the world are standing with the Israelis. But why? In CBN's free magazine, Friends of Israel, you'll discover why Christians are supporting the Jewish state, how Israel is fulfilling prophecy as a light to the nations, and ways you can pray for the people of Israel. Israel needs the support of friends like you. Call now or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Friends of Israel.
Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the work of your Spirit, Lord God, with this movement of getting the Bible,
yes,
Lord, into public schools.
Watch The Prayer Link, Tuesday nights at 6:30.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Protect your sleep and live your best life with innovative information from 5 leading sleep experts.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
Discover a sleep-enhancing bedtime routine, how to put insomnia to rest, learn how to relieve pain that disturbs sleep, and much more in Protect Your Sleep.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Don't miss out on this brand new series.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
Finally tonight, life can be tough for anyone stuck in a hospital, especially sick kids. And the pandemic has made things even worse with limited visitors and strict new rules about staying in their rooms. But now a Los Angeles area hospital is using a robot to help turn things around. Outfitted with real-time computer software that analyzes facial expressions, Robin the robot senses emotions and can even detect if a kid is sad.
That can provide empathy, can provide some support services. Mostly it'll be just for distraction, if nothing else, providing some activities.
It really feels like you're talking to a human.
He brings a smile to my face.
There are only about 5 robots like this worldwide. Thanks for watching Faith Nation. Hope to see you again tomorrow.